Sleeper Wire, the only fantasy football radio show with more than a dozen multi-time, multi-league, multi-year champions. Listen to the Sleeper Wire show every Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Dash Talk.
Hey everybody, before we start the show, I want to remind you about pristineauction.com. Daily auctions ending every single night with hundreds of items perfect for the man cave. Everything's JSA certified using the best authenticators in the business, and it's all definitely affordable. It's free to register, free to bid, and you only pay when you win. Go to pristineauction.com and let them know that you heard about it from Sleeper Wire. That's PRISTINE auction.com.
I challenge you to a duel.
It's the only argument I need. I don't want to talk to you no more, you.
You got a lot of nerve.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated.
Stop defending him, Sean.
All right, let's go.
I'm ready for love.
Hey Sleepers, welcome to the Sleeper Wire Great Debate Show, where we do a fast debate between two players. I'm your host, Professor Chris, on Twitter at Seymour Sleeper Wire, and with me, I got Dirty Jobs Mike at Dr. Kane. What's going on, Mike?
Not too bad. How you doing this evening, Chris?
I am doing awesome. I had a long day, 10 hours of driving, but you know what? I'm ready to get the debate started.
Excellent.
All right, so if this is your first time listening, what we're going to be doing here is having an actual debate-style argument between two players. We'll have 2 minutes arguing for our player, 90 seconds for rebuttals, and then we wrap it up with final thoughts. And I just want to remind you that the purpose of these is not for Mike and I to come to a consensus. I'm not trying to convince him about my player. He's not trying to convince me about his. It's to give you guys legitimate arguments for and against on who to pick up off the waiver wire today. And today, we have two rookie running backs. We got Matt Breida versus Marlin Mack. I've got Matt Breda. Mike has Marlon Mack. And Mike, you ready to get started?
I am.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off. Matt Breda is someone who just doesn't get talked about enough, and I'm not sure why. Given Carlos Hyde's injury history, you'd think that more people would be talking about his backup. Matt Breda was undrafted this year coming out of his senior year at Georgia Southern. After a great junior year, he had a pretty bad senior year, which is mostly due to a new offensive coordinator. He wasn't even invited to the NFL Combine this year. Nobody was interested in him until his pro day. He ran a 4.38 40, 23 bench press reps, a 42-inch vertical, and a 142-inch broad jump. Now, maybe those numbers just throwing around doesn't mean anything, so here's in comparison to the guys at the Combine. He would have ranked second, third, first, and first, respectively, in Combine stats this year among running backs. This guy is quick. Once he gets to the edge, he has the explosiveness and speed to produce big plays around the outside, and I think the 49ers are starting to believe in this guy. He's seen his touches increase recently from 6 touches in Week 3, 10 touches in Week 4, and 13 touches this past week against Indianapolis, rushing 10 times for 49 yards and catching 3 passes for 22 yards, putting up his first double-digit fantasy performance in PPR leagues. Carlos Hyde had a hip injury last week that limited him, but by all accounts, he was healthy this week. Kyle Shanahan said he was just going with the hot hand at running back and that the hip injury had nothing to do with Breda getting more work than Hyde. Hyde also said later that he was fine health-wise, and obviously he's not happy about losing playing time, especially to an undrafted rookie, but Breda has played his way into a nice role in that offense. When the 49ers were driving to tie the game in the fourth quarter this week, it wasn't Hyde out there, it was Breda, and he looked good. Now, he may be a smaller running back. He's only 5'9", 195 pounds, but this guy is tough. He's super strong, which is evidenced by his 23 bench rep presses at his pro day, and those are 220. All right, Mike, let's hear that rebuttal.
Okay, so you said it best right there when you said he was dealing with the hot hand. That was where the production came from. Kyle Shanahan saw where it was coming from. You saw the same thing with Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman. They would go to either one of the guys who was either producing more in that set. Now, while Breida is good, he is also small. He's not a very big running back. And when you look at Carlos Hyde, That guy always has some kind of nagging injury somewhere in there, but it's always something that he seems to play through. And you're talking about one of the worst offenses in the league. Granted, they're taking that team in the way right direction. So if we're talking about maybe dynasty value, I'll take Breida all day. But if we're talking about this year, I still think Carlos Hyde was the more dominant back. He's getting more of the carries, although this last week being the exception to the rule. It's just you see the activity coming in along injury. Kyle Shanahan is probably going to stick to the method of which he's using right now, which is the single running back system, which is still going to be Carlos Hyde. I like Breida long term, but I just don't really like him that much this year just because of the opportunity isn't going to be there with Carlos Hyde being still somewhat young at 27 years old. He's still going to be a fantasy productive guy. I just don't see that slowing down much anytime soon, barring an injury. Now, if he gets injured, that's a completely different conversation.
All right, there you got our thoughts for and against Matt Breida. Mike, let's go ahead and move into Marlin Mack.
Okay, so we've got Marlon Mack here. He's pretty dang good, and he looked really good this last week. And look at the offense that he's on. That offense is only destined to get better, especially once you start talking about getting Andrew Luck out there. You've got Frank Gore, who's the man, the myth, the legend. He is out there every single weekend doing his thing. But the guy is 34 years old. How much more abuse can this man take in the NFL before he starts really taking some serious damage? I mean, he's had a couple of injuries in the past that have slowed him down, but he is still Frank Gore, and he is still out there. But you look at the way that team's trending, and it's starting to get kind of out with the old, in with the new type scenario over there. I'm even starting to wonder if they're going to bring back Andrew Luck if Jacoby Brissett keeps playing the way he's playing, because of that youth is taking over that team, and they're actually starting to look like a legitimate winning football team with the youth out there. Marlon Mack really busted it out this week. I mean, granted, he had that one big bust, but when you still look at it, he's got 3 games, 25 rushes for 112 yards. That's about 37 yards a game, which doesn't seem like much, but he's put in 2 touchdowns. So this guy's already being fantasy relevant, even with Frank Gore out there. So, and again, Frank Gore, he is the man on that team. He's the number 1 on that depth chart. But if you look back a few weeks, you know who the number 2 was? It was Robert Turbin on that depth chart. If you look now, guess who the number 2 is? It's Marlon Mack. And he's getting that job, and the coach just recently came out and said, hey, you know what? We really liked what we saw this weekend. That man has earned more touches. He's going to get more touches. So if Pagano's even on board, again, the thing I can stress the most about that is this team is only going to get better. So
as I just was getting ready to mention before the buzzer cut me off, and something that you mentioned as well was opportunity. Marlon Mack, as much as I love the guy and as much as I love the Colts, he doesn't have a clear way to the number 1 role in that backfield. Frank Gore, the ageless wonder, is still there. He still looks good, and he still is healthy. Robert Turbin is also getting to the mix as well, as you alluded to, that he's still there, getting 6 touches this past week. Now, granted, compared to 13 touches from Mack, that's, obviously a lot lower, but he's still there getting some work. The Colts offensive line this year has been and will continue to be terrible, which is a big reason why the Colts are ranked 29th in yards per attempt as a team, as opposed to the 49ers' 14th ranking in yards per attempt. Now, I don't like to talk about yards per carry when it comes to running backs, because a lot of that isn't really the running back's fault. It's based on the offensive line. I think yards per attempt is much more telling for the offensive line than it is for running backs. Now, the center, Ryan Kelly, is back, which is great, but one player doesn't improve all 5 on that offensive line. Marlon Mack looks like he's going to be the future for the Colts. I mean, the guy looks great when he's on the field, which is why he's someone that you should absolutely be picked up off waivers this week. However, of these 2 guys, I'd go with the one who has a little bit better shot at being the guy in a backfield over someone who is a little bit blocked right now. All right, guys, before we wrap it up with our final thoughts, I've got one more thing to mention. I'm giving another shout out to another sponsor of the Great Debate Show, Fantasy Champs. We have a special offer for 10% off an order at fantasychamps.com. They've got the absolute best hardware for your fantasy football league. Championship belts, championship rings, championship trophies. They have loser trophies if you want to, just make fun of the guy in last place. Go on fantasychamps.com and use the promo code SLEEPERS for 10% off your order. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move to our final thoughts here, and I'm going to take it back to Matt Breida. So, like I was saying when he got cut off, he is a super strong guy with his 23 bench rep presses, and he's explosive. That's also evidenced by his 42-inch vertical and 142-inch broad jump. With these measurables and the talent, he's a guy who definitely needs to be picked up. However, measurables and talent only get you so far. You said opportunity isn't going to be there, and I would agree that opportunity is a huge part of fantasy, especially for running backs. However, once again, referencing Carlos Hyde's injury history, Breda could very well soon have the opportunity in addition to the measurables and talent, which launches him into a must-start spot on your roster. I've been saying pick this guy up for the last 3 weeks on our Dash Radio show, and this is probably going to be your last chance to snag him.
Okay, so the biggest thing that I think about these guys is that they're almost the same guy. Like, I like both of their opportunity. I do think I lean maybe slightly Breda more because of Carlos Hyde's injury history, but I really do like how Marlin Mack is fitting in on this offense. And again, I can't stress enough, I feel like that their youth is taking over in Indianapolis, and I think it may continue to take over as long as they continue to have winning results with it.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Great Debate. Couple things before we go. I want to remind you to check out our new home at Dash Radio. Listen to me, Nick, and Mickey every Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern, and then again over the weekend. Also want to encourage you to go to sleeperwire.com. Check out our weekly rankings. You can submit a question to the Sleeperwire crew. You can find us on Twitter at Sleeperwire Show. I'm on Sleeperbot at Professor Chris. Mike is on there at Dirty Jobs, if I'm not mistaken. Correct. And you can also find me on the Fantasy Life at Professor Chris. Mike, are you on the Fantasy Life app?
I am not currently.
Not yet? Maybe
nope, I'm getting there. I'll actually get one this week.
Awesome. And you can also find me on Instagram at Professor Chris SW. And one change I want to make, Mike, you are Dr. Kane 21 on Twitter, not Dr. Kane.
Correct, yes.
All right. Well, now that we got that cleared up, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.